reflection for Unit 3. So this is Monday. So 3 takeaways I got was the rise of the working class, growing in size and power. We are still in the Industrial Revolution till this day. I find this interesting how advanced we're gonna get in the future because of the so-called the Great Depression going on right now. Another takeaway is during this time, the interest in history and science was becoming increasingly popular as people were focusing more on philosophy and basically religion was kind of going towards atheism. And then another takeaway is how electricity has really changed and made an impact on people's daily lives, especially theater history, whether it's psychologically or physically. And that's true because the lighting really invoked different emotions. Like, for instance, maybe someone couldn't see, but they could sense where, like, the play's tone, the play's lighting changed, you know? A question I had is who's Robert DeMario? What was it like navigating the world pre-digital era? I met some people who talked about using maps to navigate directions, and I was like, oh, that's crazy. So I just find that interesting. And then now Wednesday. So my takeaway from Wednesday is commentary on political and social things, economic injustice, and sexual double standards, like how women are held from a different standpoint from men during this era. Unhappy marriages, diseases, and STDs. It seems like women are really, I guess their issues were starting to be heard, and it brought a lot of dynamics. A doll's house, when he finds a letter, it seems they were stressed like people at the time, so like literally the plays resonated with people's lives during the time. I would say like gray mortality is what one of the students said in the discussion. She did something illegal but with good motives. Chekhov, Vanya's violent breakdown, Uncle Vanya in the scene, you can see domestic family matters. A question I have is Wallace Shawn. Who is that? And can we see the other version of the same scene? Can't wait to see the symbolism play. Um, but you did reference and say Wallace Shawn is Vanya from the Doll's House, so I guess I just kind of wanted to see who was Wallace Shawn in the other scene you were talking about. I want to see how his character portrayed differently. So on Friday, I wrote Chekhov is the perfect playwright for Gen Z. He showcases a random sense of humor with a kind of dark twist. He focuses on real life, fast and slow. Subtext is important in those scenes because his humor was funny, just with a twist. But looking for change in little details of playwriting is important because you want to make sure that you don't get lost and the scene changes and the different dynamics going on. Okay, and then the magic if. If you put yourself into another perspective or point of view, you'll use Stanislavski's acting method. So if you put yourself in a what if position, put yourself in another person's point of view. But he was basically somehow manifesting how we act today in theater. So his acting method is still prevalent till this day. People still use it in acting, and it honestly makes sense because his method is just really, it just clicks with all the emotions needed in acting. How I take it. So then on Monday, 3/3, my 3 takeaways was from painted furniture to actual furniture, and I wrote this in my presentation too, of how they used they painted literal furniture, and then they actually got that real thing. So we kind of went from a generic scenery to a specific multi-angle perspective, so literally 3D objects, or just objects. Like I said earlier, colored lights orchestrated and manipulated like a musical score. The Blind was an interpretive artist, a new type of theater style. So yeah, like how she couldn't see Skaya, she wasn't able to see, but she was able to sense or like see the different shadows or hear the different tones in those plays. Or yeah. The Blind was an interpretive artist, a new type of theater style. Getting in touch with your senses is basically what I'm trying to say. In this video, Vesevo, people were moving like machinery, creating interesting shapes with their bodies. Actors' bodies became some sort of like element of design. The way they would move and the way their shadows casted in the backgrounds, it felt so. You could sense or feel the emotions they were trying to evoke, whether it was like robotish or like emotionally in touch, but it was really interesting to watch. A question I have is what theaters use subscription theaters in Minnesota specifically? I know Redbox is kind of like that, but not really because it's kind of like Netflix and Hulu where it's a digital subscription. So I'm like thinking about like which theaters like have that where you can just go. I mean, yeah, but yeah. And then on Wednesday for the Cherry Orchard play, so many design elements that show its realism. The box set represents a recognizable house. And so the box set is like 3 walls. Sometimes there's a ceiling on it, but yeah, it represented at during this play a recognizable house, inspired by an abandoned building in London with chairs, bed, candles, and windows. It felt like something was beyond just the house. So that was like the point of it, is to make it seem like that the box set led to more in some type of way. It made the scene more realistic. People talk a lot in the play, and that's why, like I said earlier, it's good to pay attention to the little shift in details or events going on. Like maybe the relationships of the cast, or the status of their social status, the shift and change, like for example, the shift and change in Vanya and Patia, we didn't know if they were going to be a couple or not. So it's an example. And then how they place people in different areas of the set based on their scene. There were about 7 to 8 people on stage. Skaya shows an example of how we know she's listening and people are paying attention to her, even though she's not saying anything. So that's kind of what I was talking about earlier also, is like how colored, how those little design elements really evoked a certain emotion, even though we couldn't physically see it. So then a question I have is, why do people create hidden messages instead of being upfront? Is that part of the play, and what emotions does it convey? And then for the Friday reflection, I said the first presentation, I liked the darkish reddish color that he decided to come up with for one of the actors, because it evokes an emotion of depth, and that's what the character was kind of evoking. Lady Bracknell's personality really shows on her clothes, loud and proud, with like the cuffs being like open. It was very like sporadic and just flamboyant. So the second presentation took place at the end of the Victorian era. Covent Garden is one of the main scenes with the most characters acting in it. So that was the most main used box set or scene during that play. And for the last, in the international festivals presentation, Europe theater festivals began to emerge as an important cultural event. Henrik Ibsen and Chekhov had an influence worldwide. So a question I would have is, what pivotal moments are we going to see in the future units? And that is my theater